Hi, kia ora from New Zealand, to our subject and filmmaker of the film, one of ours. I'd like to welcome Yasmine Mathurin and Josiah Wilson. How are you both?
Good. We're really good. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Doing good, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
it's our
you for having me.
pleasure. Okay, I'll just introduce you to a New Zealand word. So we always say kia ora, which means hi. So when I say kia ora, it's actually our Maori word for welcoming you to this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, One of ours is a film that I absolutely loved. When I first watched it, I thought to myself, this is a film that resonates of our times because in a world where people are moving and there's a lot of immigration, there's also a lot of people that are entering into mixed marriages, and then you also have transnational adoptions. The issue of identity and authenticity is a really important issue. I know I have my own views on it, but I would certainly love to be able to explore this a bit more with you today. So, but to start off with, I think that maybe the best way to start off is Yasmin, tell us, how did you come across the story? And then I'll cross over to Josiah and ask Josiah how he first came in contact with you.
Yeah. So Josiah and I knew each other when we were kids, actually. So I moved to Calgary when I was around 11 years old, and so my aunt was pretty connected to to the small Haitian community out in Calgary, and so when I was a kid, because basically our parents kind of knew each other. What I remember them telling me was that, oh, here are these two Haitian kids, which was Mariah and Josiah, both of which are in the film, and like just go and play. So to me, they were just people that we kind of grew up around. And I also vividly remember Josiah being super hyper and also always playing basketball. um like because I was part of a Haitian dance a dance group in Calgary, with Mariah, actually, and so he would always kind of tag along every time we had practice. So that's kind of how we knew each other. And so over the years, I just kind of very loosely kind of kept in touch with people like you do on Facebook, when and stuff. So when all this stuff happened with the tournament, that's sort of how it kind of got brought up on my radar. And then I kind of reached out to Don, Josiah's dad, and started talking to him and seeing how I can support what was happening with everything. And then that sort of led to the project of the film.
Yes. And Josiah, do you want to add to this?
Yeah. So like you said, we knew each other when we were younger, and it wasn't like if we were like friends or anything. Like she danced with my older sister, and I kind of was just there playing around. And I was bored. I was like, let me just hang out because that's what kids do. And
Yep.
yeah. So and I do remember her and her sister, and then we all grew up together. So like I remember they probably danced together for a few years at least,
Yeah.
and they did some traveling and stuff like that. So we grew up, we grew pretty close together and everything like that. And then over the years, just life goes on and whatnot. And then out of nowhere, I get a message. I get a text message from Yasmin being like, "Hey, it's me, Yaz. What's up? I don't know if you remember me from your sister's old dance group back in the day." And she's like, "I heard your story and everything. I was wondering if you'd like to maybe chat about it or whatever." And at the time, I wasn't really in the moment and like in the mental space to talk about it. It was a lot. It was a lot to take on and everything. So I kind of just pushed her
Mm.
off to the side for a while. But she was very determined and very persuasive, and she kept on pushing at it. And then eventually, I agreed. I was like, "Yeah, we can definitely talk about it, and we can set something up to talk and everything." And then like I think like a couple months went by, and I didn't hear from her. And I came home one day from college, and there's Yaz in my living room with her camera gear and everything. Like, we're filming, and I was kind of just like, what's up? Okay, here it goes. And yeah, it was a great start of a great
Yeah.
friendship.
Yeah, don't mess with a determined filmmaker. That's what I
That's
say.
right. That's right.
Exactly, exactly.
So tell me, yes, what inspired you to want to tell the story? And then I'll come back to Josiah to get his reaction as well.
Yeah, I think with Josiah's story, there were a lot of things that struck me. I think the number one thing was that I think I had this sort of memory of who Josiah was as a kid, and to me, he was like just this really kind kid that was also just really hyper, and and then I think my memory of that mixed with sort of when the news was reporting what was happening and the language of talking about um, his indigenous identity and his black identity and these sort of really big questions, um, it just felt like it just felt like talking about all these big issues. But I think for me, I was really concerned about how he was feeling and also how the whole family was dealing, um, having to move through something as difficult as what he was moving through. And so for me, that was my first kind of interest in wanting to talk to kind of, see how to explore what was happening. Um, but the other element of it was the fact that just all the different layers of identity that I knew existed within the family. Um, I just felt was just urgent. I think even I remember when trying to pitch the project a few times to different places and to get financing, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is real. This is a real family that has all these different identities." Because it almost sounds surreal, but to me, having kind of known them for a while, it, it yeah, if it's like to me they're just a regular family who just so
Mm.
happens to have different identities. Like everybody is coming to the family with a different perspective and a different lived experience as well. And so I think the richness of that just felt so important to me. And also I think they have such a interesting relationship. I think the way that they were raised and the conversations they've had to have around identity, around race, and all these things was so rich. And so I just felt like there was a lot there to explore. And so yeah.
Well, I think that you quite rightly said it's a very rich story, and I think that it's a very generous thing for Josiah and the family to share it with all of us. There's a lot to be learned from it. It's really interesting because there's so many identity issues. It's almost like a microcosm of the wider world, just in one family, which is really interesting for me because obviously, if you're whether you're a migrant or whether you come from a diverse background of some sort, you start to question yourself as to who you are, who you belong to, and what you represent. So I'm sure those are really important issues for you, just Josiah. So I'm curious, when this really kind filmmaker was sitting in your living room with a camera staring at you. I mean, was there any hesitation, or did you think, damn, I'm just going to go with it?
There was definitely some hesitation at the beginning for probably, I'd have to say, probably like the first 2-3 shoots that we did. I was very hesitant on just talking about it. I don't talk about my personal issues or just life issues to like in general. So to have an old friend just come up out of nowhere and be like, "Hey, buddy, so tell me about everything that's going on in your life right now," was a lot for me to take in. I was like, I don't know. Maybe we could talk a little bit. I'll give you some stuff, I guess. So it took a while for her to break me, but after a while, once she gained my trust and everything, it was all good to go, and like I gave her everything that she needed and whatnot. But it was definitely a little bit of a rough beginning, but a beautiful ending.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll come back to the Josiah Whisperer and ask the Josiah Whisperer. So how did you manage to get not only Josiah, but the people around Josiah that matters to him, as well as the people that were watching to participate. I mean, what techniques do you use to bring them into your circle of storytelling?
That's a great question. I think for me, I'll start with Josiah. Like I think with when I approached him, I didn't like obviously I wanted him to be like, yes, I want to tell my story, but I also didn't really it was okay that he to me it was okay that he didn't want to talk to me right away, because it was clear that it was a hurtful moment, you know, for him, and it was also clear that he was a very private person. And I
Mm,
know and to me there's a lot of things about Josiah that also reminds me of my own brothers and my own cousins in my life. So, you know, they're not really the ones to be very open about their feelings when they're hurt, let alone to somebody who they don't really know. So there's a lot about that I didn't like. I wanted to earn his trust, and so to me, I knew that it meant that I would have to take the time to get to know him, for him to get to know me, and get to understand my intention in wanting to ask him these challenging questions. And so for me it meant that I needed to make sure that I'm present, that I check in, that I try to be as, like for instance, like I'm in Toronto and he's in Calgary. So one of the things that I was really mindful of is that I just felt like I needed to physically be in Calgary, um,
mm,
because I think there's it's one thing to kind of check in with somebody on the phone, but it's another thing to be in town and to be able to spend that kind of time. And so I just all of that was sort of part of my process in building the relationship that we built, in the process of making the film. And the other element was because I also knew that, you know, there were things that were challenging in terms of what I was asking him
mm,
to dig into. um, I made sure to also be as clear as I could be with the rest of his family, about what my intentions were and what my intentions were with telling the story. And I think their participation and their openness to want to share their story, a little bit more so than Josiah, also kind of made me feel at ease. And I think I would say also, Josiah, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's also like, because your family trusted me as well, I think that also helped, um in terms of um in terms of him opening up. Is that true, Josiah? I feel like it
Yeah, a little bit for sure, for sure.
is.
you know, I have to say that, watching the film, there is clearly a bond of trust. You can tell, yes, that you built a bond of trust with the family, and you created an opportunity for Josiah to grow into the story, to be able to tell his side of it. It is not an easy story, and we all know that the issue of identity is one that plagues all of us. So I have to ask the question, because both of you um, are people that have come from a different country into Canada, just like I've come from a different country into New Zealand. Um, have you found answers to the issue of identity personally? Where have you gone in terms of looking for who you are, and what you mean in the greater sphere of mankind, or Canada, or even just from your city?
Ooh,
Emily.
that's like that's a great big question. And it's honestly a question uh that I'm deeply curious about. It's one of the big questions that drove me to tell this story, because I think for me, as a Haitian Canadian, I am constantly asking myself questions about my own sense of belonging. Because everywhere that I've moved, I always kind of, if for instance I grew up in Calgary for a short amount of time and now I live in Toronto, but I'm like, am I Calgarian? Am I from Toronto? Can I claim that I'm from Toronto now that I've lived here for so many years? And then when I go back to Haiti, I also feel like I'm too Canadian and I'm not Haitian enough.
Mm,
And so on and so forth. So I think it's a moving target almost to kind of settle into what it means to belong. And I think as we grow, we kind of refine what that looks like. I think for me, the process of making this film was also my own personal, almost selfish process of trying to understand what it means to belong.
Mm,
Um, and and I don't think I've landed anywhere yet, but I do think that it's so multi-layered and so multi-pronged. I think it's first a conversation with yourself in terms of your own journey and your own healing, but I also think that there's such a powerful thing about community in affirming people's sense of place and connection. And something that I learned even more so in the process of making this film. um, but yeah, it's definitely multi-layered, and it's almost like a moving target, and it shape shifts
mm.
as you grow and into different stages of your life. um yeah.
Absolutely. What about you, Josiah? How are you feeling in terms of your journey on in trying to find identity and community and belonging?
Um, Kind of like what Yaz said. There's like so many layers to it and everything like that. But I definitely feel like I'm starting to learn a little bit more about where I belong and my identity and everything like that. Like over the years, I lived in Bella Bella on the reserve for a little bit as a social worker out there, and they taught me a lot of amazing stuff. They taught me how to fish. They brought me out camping and stuff like that. So there was definitely a lot of good things that I had never done before and that I wanted to experience, especially with my family and get to know and learn their traditions and like their stories and all that stuff. So it was very interesting and it was an amazing experience for me to do that. And then even just with the whole filming of the documentary, just having the whole community and like all the friends and family and everybody behind us and supporting us with it was really really amazing. So I definitely feel that I'm somewhat figuring it out and starting to
Mm.
understand and learn where I belong. But I think it's still going to take a while, and it won't be it won't be a quick process. But I think at the end of it, I'll figure it all out.
Mm. I mean, just to share, so when I travel to Asia, they always say to me that I'm a banana because I look yellow on
Mm.
the outside and I'm white on the inside. And when I'm in New Zealand, they always see me as an Asian, but not as a Kiwi, quite often. And there's always that real problem of identity because people sometimes look at you superficially, but they don't really get to know you or understand exactly where you come from. I want to share with you also a word in Māori, turanga waiwai. That's a word we use in New Zealand to talk about a place that you can stand. That's a
Mm.
place that you identify. And I think that the process of finding your identity is an organic process. It's going to take a while. And I certainly hope that you will find your turanga waiwai as you go along. And I do think that part of that is in your community and your family that you have nurtured and the friends around you. We do have some questions, and I would like to go to it. The first is the obvious one. Josiah, are you still playing basketball?
Yes, I am. I was recently up at the All Native tournament this year. It happened a couple months later due to COVID and everything, but we did have it. It was an amazing time. And then I just started playing in men's league in the city with some of my friends as well. So yes, I'm still playing lots and lots of basketball.
And Yasmin, what was the most challenging thing you found in making this film?
Ooh, there were a few challenges. I think there were a few challenges. I think I feel like it's a tie between two things. Uh, Number one, uh, I think the emotional process of creating space, because I think about, I think there were a lot of conversations that Josiah and I had, a lot of conversations that didn't make it into the film. But I think in order to sort of build the relationship we built, there was a lot of conversations that needed to be made, and I think about sort of just creating that emotional space for us to have that, I think at times was challenging. And so I think um, creating for myself like a self-care practice to allow me to do this work with care for myself as well as care for the participants in the projects. I think setting that up was a bit of a challenge, but once I got there, it was wonderful. And I think the second challenge was just finishing the film in a pandemic and finding it and just making it to the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, the pandemic and everything else is has been a scourge in terms of the work we do. It's created challenges, but I think the most important thing is that you need to look after yourself as a filmmaker and to look after the subjects in your film.
Hmm.
Which then takes me to a question from Tanya, who wanted to know, Josiah, are you keeping in touch with family much nowadays, or how are things
Uh,
going there?
yeah. I was actually just in BC like a week and a half ago visiting my grandma. Not my dad actually. My dad had to go. He was out of town. He went down to the States for a visit to visit some people, and so I went out to stay with my grandma. And while I was there, my sister now Mariah, she lives out in BC in Bella Bella now, and she was actually in Vancouver for medical stuff. So while she was there, I got to meet up with her and visit with her and everything like that. So that was really good to see her because I don't get to see her too often because we live a couple provinces
Mm.
away. But no, I still keep in contact with everybody and we talk here and there and everything like that.
Great. I mean, I think that you're real blessed because just watching the film, you have incredible characters in your family, such strong people. So, our love to them as well, from
Thank,
New Zealand.
thank you.
Um, and a final question to both of you actually is, can you tell me, has it changed you or changed your views in any way? What in terms of that, it could be the film, it could be the subject, it could be how has the film changed you? Because documentary is meant to create dialogue. It's meant to change your view of the world. I like to know what the change was for you.
I love this question. Josiah, you go first. I feel like I've been going on first every time.
Um, Honestly, it really just helped me realize that there really is love out there in the world, and there's people that care about these kind of situations. And seeing people get mistreated and whatnot, there are people that don't stand for it. And the reason I say that is because when Yasmin first messaged me, I didn't have faith that people would want to listen to the story, people would care of the whole story and the whole situation. But she persuaded me and she told me that people genuinely really do care about this kind of stuff and people want to know, and we need more stories like this and all that. And over time, with our just becoming friends and our friendship as it built, I could see that what she was telling me was true from the start. And every time we'd have a new shoot or something that was going down, she was like, "Yep, I pitched it to some more people and they loved it and they're on our side and all this." So it really helped me just realize that there really is good people out there and that people that want to see a difference in the world and make a change. So that was really good to actually be able to finally get to see that and kind of feel relieved over it all.
That's
Thank you,
great.
Yasmin.
Um, how has the stock changed me or my views in any way? I think I think for me, the process of making the film changed me. Um, this was my first film, and so for me, I consider myself a storyteller, but I think in the beginning, this was my film school. This was the biggest film school I could ever have asked for. Was just, kind of like a baptism by fire, so to speak, by going through this process. And so I think for me, I learned to, I think I learned more about who I was and my perspective, and and my own sort of I think my belief in myself got stronger at the end of it, because throughout the process it was definitely tested all throughout. And yeah, and I think it's been really incredibly rewarding and validating, to hear that the film is reaching different folks. Like, it's still like so surreal that our film is reaching a place like New Zealand, because this was a little idea, a little seed, and just kind of pushing it up a hill for so long, and unsure as to what would happen next. So to me, this whole process has been eye-opening in terms of you know the persistency of really telling a story, and its potential, right? um and so that kind of gives me hope, and I feel like I've managed to kind of, after I finish after I finished the film, I took a bit of a break to like decompress, and now I'm like, okay, maybe I can make another film again, because I at the end of it, it's such challenging work, right? And so yeah, so I think it's kind of the overall journey has really just strengthened um my own perspective and skills as a filmmaker. So I'm just incredibly grateful for that journey.
And we are extremely grateful that you took the time to actually make this film, and for Josiah that you wanted to be part of this film, because, as I said again at the very beginning, it's an amazing film. I encourage everyone that's seen the film to go out and tell other people about it. It's a very contemporary, a very current, a very urgent issue, and it's a very human issue, because sometimes we get defined by problems. And actually, I think what really defines us is the way we deal with humanity. And this is certainly one of the films that I feel very strongly reaffirms that. And with that, I once again thank you again so much. And I hope that one day you'll be able to come and visit us in New Zealand, play basketball here, just enjoy our hospitality, come and join us at the festival. But we certainly, really loved having you today. And thank you again for your film.
Thank you.
And for those
Thank
of you, well, yeah, great. And for those of you who are watching, when you finish, if you really wanted to, you can still go out to our gallery where, and we have a whole lot of extra projects, and hopefully you'll find time to watch more films and go and tell everyone about this film. This film is important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.